Your savings account is a slow death trap. Every single day, silently and visibly, your money is losing value. The cruel part? Most people don't even notice. We've been trained from childhood to believe that money in a bank is safe, that it's growing with interest, that our financial future is secured by the vault doors and the credibility of the institution. But that's a carefully maintained illusion. Behind the glossy advertisements and the reassuring smiles of bank managers lies a reality that is far more unsettling. Your wealth is being drained, not by thieves in the night, but by the very system you trust to protect it. This is the hidden tax that almost no one talks about. Inflation doesn't just nibble at your money, it devours it over time. And if you think a few percentage points a year doesn't matter, prepare to have that belief shattered. Because over decades, it's the difference between living with dignity and struggling to survive. Today, we'll journey through the emotional, historical, and mathematical truth about why your money is worth less every single year, and why the future might hold something even worse than you imagine. Chapter 1. The problem: inflation. Inflation is not just an economic term. It's a silent predator. You feel it every time you go shopping, every time you pay a bill, every time you notice that the numbers on your payslip stay the same, but the numbers at the supermarket checkout climb higher. This slow erosion of your purchasing power is often presented as a natural part of life, something as unavoidable as the weather. But that's not true. Inflation is the direct result of human decisions, political choices, monetary policy, and the design of the modern financial system. If you earned $50,000 last year and inflation is officially at 5%, which often underestimates the real impact, you've effectively lost $2,500 of purchasing power, even if your salary stayed the same. That's the price of a family vacation, or several months of groceries, gone without a single dollar leaving your account. And the most insidious part is that inflation compounds over time. In 10 years, even a modest rate will cut the real value of your money almost in half. In this chapter, we'll strip away the myths and show how inflation has been engineered into the DNA of our economic model. Chapter 2. The emotional connection. Think about your own life. Remember the first job you ever had and what you earned? At the time, it probably felt like a decent sum. Now compare that to the price of rent, food, or fuel today. Does it feel like you're running faster just to stay in the same place? That's the emotional reality of inflation. It doesn't just shrink the numbers in your wallet, it shrinks your dreams. You work hard, you save, you delay gratification in the hope of a better tomorrow, only to find that tomorrow costs more than you expected. It's a cruel betrayal. And this betrayal isn't accidental, it's systemic. Your grandparents might have told you about buying a house for a fraction of today's prices, raising a family on one income, and retiring comfortably. Those stories feel almost like fairy tales now, because the value of money has been deliberately diluted over time. The emotional weight of inflation is heavy, but understanding it is the first step to breaking free from its grip. Chapter 3. A journey through history. To understand why money loses value, we need to step back in time and see how we got here. In 1944, as World War II came to a close, the Bretton Woods Agreement established a new global monetary order. Most currencies were pegged to the US dollar, and the dollar itself was pegged to gold. This gave people a sense of security. Gold was tangible. It couldn't be printed at will. Money had weight, literally. But as the decades passed, the US government found itself spending more than it earned, especially during the Vietnam War and expansive domestic programs. By the late 1960s, other countries began to doubt America's ability to redeem its dollars for gold. In 1971, President Richard Nixon made a fateful decision. He ended the dollar's convertibility into gold. This Nixon shock was the birth of the pure fiat system we have today, where money is backed not by metal but by faith. Faith in governments and central banks. Since that moment, the money supply has exploded, and the purchasing power of the dollar has been in permanent decline. Chapter 4. How inflation works. Inflation happens when more money chases the same amount of goods and services. Picture a game of musical chairs, but instead of removing chairs, we keep adding more players. Each dollar in the system has to compete harder to buy the same loaf of bread, tank of gas, or square foot of housing. Governments and central banks create money to stimulate economies, fund deficits, and rescue markets during crises. In the short term, it feels like free money. In the long term, it dilutes the value of every dollar in circulation. There's also another factor: supply shocks. When war, natural disasters, or pandemics disrupt production, prices can surge even without new money being printed. But when you combine supply shocks with aggressive money creation, as we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic, you get the perfect storm for runaway inflation. Chapter 5. Case Studies in Collapse. Weimar Germany, 1920s. The government printed money to pay war reparations. Within months, bread cost billions of marks. Zimbabwe, early 2000s. Land reforms destroyed agricultural output, leading to shortages and money printing to cover deficits. Inflation reached 79%, rendering the currency worthless. Venezuela, 2010. Oil prices collapsed, government mismanagement deepened, and the printing presses rolled. People resorted to bartering for food. These cases show that inflation can spiral into hyperinflation shockingly fast once trust in a currency is broken. The lesson? Currency value is built on trust, and once that trust evaporates, no amount of official promises can bring it back quickly. Chapter 6. Who really benefits? Inflation doesn't hurt everyone equally. In fact, for some, it's a gold mine. Governments benefit because they can repay old debts with cheaper money. If you borrow $1 billion and inflation halves the value of the currency, you've effectively repaid only $500 million in real terms. Banks benefit because they lend money at interest, and as inflation rises, the real value of what's repaid can be less than what was borrowed. Large corporations with pricing power can simply pass on higher costs to consumers. The real victims are wage earners, savers, and retirees on fixed incomes. Inflation transfers wealth from the many to the few. It's a silent, legal form of theft. Chapter 7. The Current Crisis. We're living through one of the most inflationary periods in decades. Supply chains are fractured, energy prices volatile, and governments deeply in debt. Central banks are in a trap. Raise interest rates to fight inflation and risk triggering a recession, or keep rates low and allow inflation to keep eating away at purchasing power. Meanwhile, the middle class is under siege. Housing affordability is collapsing. Education and healthcare costs are rising faster than wages. This is the slow boiling of the frog. The water is getting hotter, but because the changes are gradual, many people don't jump out. Chapter 8. The Future Collapse Predictions. If current trends continue, we could see a major currency reset within our lifetimes. This could take the form of introducing central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, replacing cash entirely with government-controlled digital money. It might involve a debt jubilee, where debts are wiped out in exchange for accepting a new currency. It could even mean the end of national currencies as we know them, replaced by regional or global systems. In every scenario, the transition will be sold as for your protection. But the reality is likely to involve even greater control over your financial life. Chapter 9. How to protect yourself. The best defense against inflation is education and preparation. Assets that historically retain value, like real estate, gold, and certain stocks, can protect wealth. Diversifying into multiple income streams, from side businesses to digital assets, reduces dependency on a single source of earnings. Paying down debt, especially high-interest consumer debt, shields you from rising rates. And perhaps most importantly, developing a mindset that questions the status quo ensures you won't be caught off guard when the rules change again. Your savings account is not safety, it's a slow death trap. Inflation is the thief that robs you in your sleep. But knowledge is your weapon. Now that you understand the mechanics, the history, and the future risks, you have a choice. Do nothing and watch your wealth erode, or take action to protect it. The time to act is not tomorrow, it's today. My name is Felix, you've been warned! Like and subscribe.